Willis is back in the news. A new development in her disqualification case. A Georgia appeals court is agreeing to review the ruling that allowed the Fulton County District Attorney to stay on former President Trump's election interference case. And Trump's team is accusing Willis of having a conflict of interest over her romantic relationship with the... Really? Was it romantic? I don't know. He never said he loved her. We could get into it, but we won't. I'll start to sound like Stormy. The special prosecutor she assigned to prosecute Trump was someone that she ended up being involved with. Or maybe one predicated the other. We don't know. Jonathan Serrie is live in Atlanta with more. Jonathan.
Hi there, Harris. That order that is under appeal allowed Fani Willis to stay on the case on condition her former boyfriend Nathan Wade stepped down. But the defense argues that's not enough.
He excused himself from the case, but our argument is that basically this does not right the wrong. There should be disqualification. This case is selective prosecution. It's persecution at its best, and now we get to be heard on that.
District Attorney Willis had hoped to bring the former president and his associates to trial in August, but the court's decision to hear the appeal is all but certain to push opening arguments well past the November presidential election and leaves in question whether Willis will be the one delivering those opening arguments. Legal analysts say this is a big win for the defense because it keeps the focus on Willis and further delays the prosecution because the first of two terms in which the busy appeals court could take up the issue does not begin until August. Georgia State University law professor Anthony Michael Kreis says the prosecution will be lucky if this case goes to trial in spring of 2025. Harris?
Wow, that's an interesting nugget of information. Jonathan, thank you very much. You know, Fani Willis, why didn't the judge just pull them both off?
Should have. I mean, you're asking a question that I think most of America was feeling even before the judge issued the ruling. It's basic common sense as you see the fact pattern. When somebody is running to be the district attorney and they're running under pledges to take people down, like we saw with Alvin Bragg, with Tish James, obviously it's a very political election interference prosecution that's going on down in Georgia. There are a lot of Americans who might not be supporters of President Trump. Mm-hmm. They're independent-minded Americans who see that this is a political prosecution. Now you add the dynamic of this of the counsel being a lover, and the decisions get made as far as allocation of resources, how to spend tax dollars. You get a request from the counsel to plus up a team, more money for that person who is that prosecutor you appointed, and you're signing off, yes to all of this stuff. To answer your question bluntly, I think a lot of Americans were sure hoping that that judge was going to do the right thing here as opposed to trying to play it both ways.
Irrespective of what they were doing, you know, in their private lives. And again, he's not her boyfriend. He was married. No one wants to talk about that, I guess. But, you know, put all of that aside for the justice system to have integrity. You don't want people that are manipulating things like that, whether it's Fani Willis or, and I have questions about the judge yesterday, Judge Merchan. He says after the fact, oh, some of those details didn't need to be said about Stormy Daniels. I mean, the only thing we were missing was the movie she was in last. I mean, it was nasty. And he waited until then to say that.
Yes, and I think what we have been seeing recently reflected, for example, in that is sort of an abdication of duty under the guise of, oh, well, I don't have the power for that. We've seen it in our president. We've seen it now in Judge Merchan, who certainly did have the power to stop it, to sustain defense's ongoing objection to that testimony as being irrelevant and prejudicial, and to say, I'm going to cut in. We're in a sidebar right now, and this is going to end. So what we're seeing is weak leadership in these roles that make a difference and have an impact. You can't cut the baby. You can't have it both ways. This is not the last we are seeing of Fani Willis, nor that circus that she has made of the Georgia justice system. And I note that she has staunchly declared publicly she will not comply with the subpoena or the Georgia Senate investigations request for her to come to them to explain whether or not taxpayer funds were used in this charade. She has likened it to, as she says, well, I'm sorry that people get a curse word for angry at people being treated equally. The lieutenant governor of Georgia came out and said, I'm sorry, this is what it looks like when you treat people equally, which is that, yes, you will comply with a subpoena.
Yeah, consequences, Tammy.
I think that what people are realizing is that Georgia, Fani Willis, underestimated Trump, underestimated the American people, overestimated herself. But the larger issue here is when it is a political prosecution and everyone is on board, even subconsciously or silently, you can't rock the boat. Because then if you're an elected official, if you want to be invited to the parties, if you want to continue in your job in some fashion, that you would be the one to blow up the ship. It's like, what are you doing? So that is one of the core problems with a political prosecution is that either people are silent, don't want to say anything to disrupt it, and when they really should, they don't. And the entire framework, Harris, as you noted, begins to collapse.
It's like the jury. It only takes one. So
Yeah.
Apparently in lawfare, it only takes one to mess up. And then it's broken.
Despite not being disqualified from this case, what the judge found was really bad for both of them. And I just want to remind you of what the judge wrote. He said there's an odor of mendacity. There's a tremendous lapse of judgment. The unprofessional manner of the DA's testimony, he referred to that, a significant appearance of impropriety that infects the current structure of the prosecution team. So he found that despite there being an appearance of a conflict of interest, that did not demand disqualification. The American public looks at this and just says, something is afoul here. This should not be, she should not be on the case. We always knew this interlocutory appeal was coming. It came, and it's not just this. Remember, the Senate investigation to which Emily refers, there are 12,000 contacts between Nathan Wade and Fani Willis. 10,000 of them are text messages.
Wow.
If the Senate gets those, more information comes out. Bye-bye. Not going to see this in 2025. Maybe won't see it ever.
It turns out that a lot of the salaciousness that they had hoped to bring against Donald Trump actually involves the people who are, who are prosecuting,
Great
testifying.
point.
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Great point. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.